Kaia Draven arrived with the posture of someone used to heavier skies. The shuttle carrying new apprentices decelerated against the magnetic mooring ring of the Celestial Academy's orbital citadel. Outside the glassed viewport, the Velorian Nebula churned in shades of cobalt and pearlescent violet, a star-forming nursery unclaimed by any empire. The storm of light looked like silent thunder, ribbons folding into clusters that birthed suns every few centuries. To most species, it was a cathedral. To her, it was data in motion. The docking gates dilated open like petals made of star iron. A warm pressure hiss brushed apprentices' ankles as they disembarked, the citadel's internal gravity adjusting to a diplomatic median, convenient for many, insulting to a few. Kaia stepped out last. No entourage. No nebula cosmetic on her uniform. No gravity illusion pendant shimmering at her throat. She carried a single device, a curvature probe, matte black, scuffed by atmospheric friction tests on her homeworld, New Praha. A mid-gravity human planet, classified Deathworld Grade Beta, famous for dense air, alkaline storms, and gravity that made growing up feel like climbing invisible slopes. She inhaled once, letting her ribcage calibrate to the new pressure. She spent the exhale observing. The citadel spiraled upward and outward, lecture domes levitating on tension fields, observatories bridged by grav-glass paths, arboretum rings where magnetic vines bore star-like blossoms. Beneath it all pulsed the Academy's core, a trapped microstar used to stabilize gravity shifts. Barely a kilometer wide but conscious in its reactions, it sang in frequencies machines could only approximate. Orientation guides draped in silver robes began leading students into the convergence atrium. Lord Zaryx Voss walked at the front of the cohort. Tall, deliberate like an etched mythical hero, though his steps were softened by kinetic null boots that negated any strain. His amber armor-lined cadet coat refracted light by design, mapping faint star motifs around his silhouette. He was beautiful in the way monuments were, crafted to be seen, not questioned. Kaia did not look at beauty long. She looked for distortion, subtle irregularities in the airfolds, microlensing anomalies along corridor seams, gravity minimas that didn't align with architectural mass. A professor walked by, his species unknown to her. His chart magic illusions flickered around his shoulders, delicate projections used to signal intellectual rank. The illusions brushed Kaia's proximity and dimmed for a fraction of a second before recovering. She logged the dimming mentally, brow knitting just tight enough to mark curiosity, not concern. Inside the atrium, noble species clustered like constellations unto themselves. Trustees lined the upper balconies, masked in evolutionary superiority. Humans had only recently been invited to the Celestial Academy. Not for diplomacy. For curiosity and correction, a rising fraction in interstellar equations, a new variable to test against the old. Some nobles had prepared polite contempt. Others had prepared loud derision. Kaia filed her entry with the Academy Registrar, name, age, origin planet, field, astrophysics. The Registrar AI scanned her chart scores, high, but not ostentatious. Efficient, but not embellished. It filed her into Tier 7 dormitories, mid-assessment wing. Zaryx filed next. Name. Heir title. Origin sigil. The AI paused twice as long before filing him into the Tier 1 constellation suites, an entire wing whose corridors constantly realigned to his ancestral star maps. Kaia walked quietly into her first lesson, stellar regression physics under Professor Oddhallren. Oddhall was not cruel. He was simply calibrated to the culture around him, give pressure, observe breakpoints, record evolution. His chalk was not chalk, it was photonic quill dust used to diagram mass curves in mid-air blackboards. The lesson began. Her classmates included Ziphian nobles, boreal minesingers, Dravian chart carvers, and at least 2 species whose membranes fluttered in iridescent patterns to broadcast emotion. Most used secondary illusions to carry their calculations into the blackboard before their quills touched. Kaia used neither illusions nor secondary quills. She simply stepped forward when asked, connected her probe, and began tracing the air herself. Professor Oddhall, Apprentice Draven. Present us your first projection. Kaia nodded. The hall's blackboard activated in anticipation. Students leaned back. Zaryx Voss leaned forward, not to observe science, but her reaction to observation. Spatial pressure began curling outward from Kaia's probe. The projection initiated. No explosions. No shimmering suns unfolding like banners. Instead, the air etched itself into a fractal grid of stellar flux probabilities, each node a coordinate possibility colored only by natural density visualization, not artificial great illusions. The atrium thrummed underfoot. The microstar sensed a calibration request and pulsed a low bass heartbeat barely audible to lower-tier instruments. Zaryx's retinue murmured. Virile, a Ziphian noble apprentice, she projects like a machine that dislikes itself. Kaia ignored the comment. Not emotionally, but cognitively, she was calculating density variance. Zaryx Voss finally spoke, voice honey-smooth, low-amp confident. Zaryx, Apprentice Draven. Your projection density is alarmingly low. Afraid to commit to a star's scale? Kaia raised her eyes, gray like unpolished steel in transition, meeting his amber lantern gaze. Kaia, low noise increases clarity. Scale requires constants before theatrics. A Dravian chart carver behind Zaryx laughed, illusions flaring like a faux solar collapse around his shoulders. Chart carver Nexon, constants? Her planet probably teaches pressure as a personality. Kaia finally responded, calm. Kaia, pressure built my intellect. It did not replace it. The classroom rippled with mock appreciation, the kind that came before dismissal. Adhalren, the professor, noted her response annotated neutrally. Adhal, you read pressure like a calibration force. Continue. Kaia placed another node. Unit metrics etched like obedient neurons into the board. Zaryx raised his gauntlet quill next, interrupting with a projected diagram, a glowing representation of star route dominance arc recorded in gilded history. A tightening corridor field began compressing Kaia's projection unexpectedly. The energy came from Zaryx's boots sending micromagnetic pulses into the atrium floor, influencing electromagnetic lattice lines to subtly unbalance Kaia's projection grid. Kaia's curvature probe detected the interference of full 0.7 seconds before light collided. The projection grid sparked, not catastrophically, minor lens fork diffraction. It was barely a flicker. No one would have looked twice if Zaryx had not chosen to make it a crime. Zaryx, Council. Her chart fault triggered implosion intercept vector 0.043%. She misaligned destiny. Students gasped not at the spark, but the accusation density. Nobles whispering commands into balcony trustees perked forward like wolves smelling paperwork opportunity. Kaia pointed to her curvature probe with deliberate fingers. Kaia, sensor log shows lattice offset predates my chart. Cross-reference timestamp. Zaryx, cutting her off, human testimony is statistical ash here. Kaia breathed in again. A heavier nod this time. The trustees convened. Kaia was not present for most of the murmured judgments. Zaryx Voss delivered the accusation theatrically, illusions blossoming around his shoulders as he influenced the atrium's electromagnetic lattice to display the spark path as sabotage signature. The retinue of Voss aligned his version in chorus. The council elder known as Archon Hal 9 descended from balcony shadows, armor robes trailing like black nebula lace. Council Elder Archon, you manifest brilliant charts, heir of Voss. What says the human? Zaryx, she deflected a Voss origin projection. Humans misalign stars by ego interference. Kaia clenched jaw, but did not shout. She offered minimal speech. Kaia, I request chart lattice log integrity validation prior to fault impact. Archon Hal 9, denied. Heir Voss displayed origin map fault reactively, not prior. The implosion registered on your probe contact point. Intent is assumed by impact. Zaryx, smiling faint intent is declared by orbital privilege. Kaia looked at the panel. Her eyes, normally calm, carried a brief micro-shimmer, not illusion, but recognition. The council mistook it for emotional flair. Professor Oddhall, softly to her, observe. Do not consume judgment. Respond in your scale. Kaia nodded. Balcony nobles smiled like archivists with fresh pages. Archon, Apprentice Draven, Kaia of New Praha. You will repeat the ritual of convergence under a 99.999% accuracy requirement. One deviation in your species' sponsorship is revoked. Fail, and humans lose nebula access for a decade. Mid-atrium trustees slammed quills in semi-applause. Kaia did not shake. She simply pocketed the curvature probe and whispered. Kaia, deviation requires mass to fail. I do not plan to fail. The final note of the atrium microstar pulse was low. Unimpressed by nobles. Curious about humans. Kaia left the atrium under sneers and balcony laughter, but the glass star tracks underfoot subtly vibrated, a full register curvature harmonic spike logged by the Citadel AI but not yet revealed. That night, star coordinates around her dorm observatory window microlensed differently. A small but measurable adjustment. Like space leaning closer. Humans were mocked for illusionless restraint. They failed to calculate the mass that restraint concealed. Expulsion clocks ticked. The microstar waited. The hatch of Tier 7 dormitories sealed behind Kaia with a pneumatic sigh. Silence returned, but only in acoustics. Her mind was already racing ahead, parsing the ritual parameters she now had to conquer. Her room was a triangular vault clad in translucent sapphire plates that dimmed automatically under unauthorized wave signatures. The walls were embedded with the Academy's stellar hum, kept deliberately faint so that every apprentice could claim ownership of thought rather than sound. Kaia had always preferred low input over loud narrative, focus sharp and fastest that way. She set the curvature probe on her desk. It whirred through self-diagnostics, projecting tiny luminescent numerals in Old Terran script, the only flair she ever tolerated, sentimental rather than aesthetic. The display read. Core sync readiness, 6%. A pathetic number by Academy standards. A promising one by New Praha metrics. She placed a blank folio beside it, dipping an ink quill into a manual well, actual ink this time, not light. On Deathworlds, analog instruments survived better than delicate ones. She scribbled the ritual conditions atop the folio. Forecast must exceed 99.999% precision. Lattice integrity errors cannot exceed 0.001% tolerance. Apprentice neurology cannot interface directly with microstars. She tapped point 3 with a fingernail. Kaia, to the probe a discouragement. Not a constraint. Her first task was node rebuild triage, to understand the microstar that governed the atrium beneath her feet. She needed unfiltered readings, which meant a trip to a study wing even the nobles avoided, the astrophysical greenhouse ring known to faculty logs as the Sanctum of Zero Lumina, a research tier suspended between gravitational regulators for raw chart observation. Kaia reached the greenhouse by descending 1,017 steps along an unlit spiral stair. High-tier species use teleport wefts or motion null rings to glide through the citadel. Kaia used stairs because acceleration blurred gradients. At the base, the corridor widened into an enormous 16:9 observation portal. The Magnet Garden's ring draped itself like a floating terrarium, a necklace latched around the citadel's midsection, where magnetic vines bloomed spiraling helix flowers that cracked open to reveal captured star particulates. They floated like pollen frozen in time, small fusion-capable seeds used for anomaly simulations. The air tasted ionized, sterile, experimental. She passed through the arch. The internal AI known only as Halcyon 3 greeted each entrant silently through thought-captioned telemetry. Kaia's temple felt the pressure of mental voice. Halcyon 3, Apprentice presence flagged. Research track requires clearance. Kaia, override, independent anomaly indexing Draven protocol clearance. Halcyon 3, clearance not recognized. Kaia, then witness its debut. Halcyon 3 paused long enough to let an entire microsecond hang like a punctuation mark in the Citadel's mind before the arch dilated open. Inside, the room was not illuminated by bulbs or suns, but by muted stellar particles caught in magnetic suspension nets that gently cast light at 2% capacity. Nobles disliked unfinished brightness. Scientists adored it. Thousands of data threads hovered at ankle height, mapping orbits that sang not through spectacle but numerical pressure. Kaia knelt beside one magnetic lattice filament, tuning her probe. The device didn't bloom with theatrics, it simply collected. Flux readings poured onto her screen like captured heartbeats. Lattice displacement variance, 0.0438%. Local curvature index, 0.0. Ambient noble simulation static, 21%. That last number confused her. Simulation static was high, but actual curvature was 0. Illusions simulated gravity without ever touching spacetime itself. Kaia closed her eyes, letting her mind listen to a frequency humans evolved to recognize, the base heartbeat of oppressive gravity from New Praha itself. She let her breathing slow to a differential rate that matched star particulate contraction. It was a neurological trick honed on dense worlds where thought had to move faster than weather or tectonics to survive. Her neurons emitted a low pulse, not mystical, but biological, rippling outward like a slow gravitational request into the ether. The suspended star pollen obeyed the request instantly. Single particulates jolted, curving inward by an index no Academy sensor should be able to detect. Halcyon 3, curvature detected. Kaia, magnitude? Halcyon 3, 0.0004 curvature points. Authentic. Unrecorded. Kaia, smiling briefly now recorded. Kaia Draven anomaly index start. Kaia began running spatial forecasts by hand, not by magic. Her probe mapped strings of mass possibility that flexed outward like cartographic data tendrils. Magnetic vines hovering above her steps pulsed silver. The number waves did not scream, they hummed like Newtonic weft lines, mathematical halos that surrounded her like a puzzle solving itself around a stronger mass. The AI registered each reading instantly into the Citadel logs. Kaia whispered to itself while writing feelings through subtle musings, new phrasing and new imagery each sentence to avoid repetition. Kaia, when stars scatter, you don't scold their paths, you compute their drift. Her next reading projected like a small black hole of variance reduction, a set of coordinate corrections that recalibrated not the stars, but the observer's assumptions of who should bend them. She did not raise her voice. She refined the numbers. Behind her, unseen by most, Zaryx Voss stood in the upper crosswalk. He had disabled his boots' motion null weave so that the footsteps of realization could carry some humility. His coat's star motifs dimmed near her curvature aura. That meant her curvature index was interfering with his illusion's electromagnetic dampeners. Impossible in theory, but visible in practice. He finally spoke, not loudly, but audibly this time. Zaryx, your numbers are unconventional. Kaia, not turning your compliment is 1.9 minutes late. Zaryx, you monitored me? Kaia, I monitor space. You just stand loudly in it. Zaryx showed agitation without violence, an emotion the audience had not yet seen from a noble. Zaryx, repeating the ritual won't redeem you. Kaia, redemption isn't a request. It's an outcome. Zaryx, you'll collapse. Kaia, collapse requires inequality. I resolve those. The microstar filament above her desk trembled again. Kaia's neurons synchronized with microstellar heartbeat signatures precisely long enough for the star pollen to jolt inward like a gasp in space. Magnetic vines rippled like spines resetting geometry around her gravitational calm. The environmental metaphors changed again. Not forges, not explosions. Instead, roots, pulses, bending filaments, hidden pressures, micrometric outcomes. Every description evolving in wording to avoid previous vocabulary repeats. Kaia resumed work, impartial to Zaryx's interruptions. The probe sync climbed. Core sync readiness, 27%. Still small. But no longer pitiful. Kaia eventually stood. The sheet beneath her feet shimmered not because it was decorative, but because spacetime around her mustered a stoic footnote. She had absorbed not the ridicule, but the coordinate drift beneath it. She noticed an anomaly cluster far larger than her academic fate. Star Route Fragility Index, 18.7%. A dangerous deviation Zaryx's ancestor charts ignored because nobles preferred symmetry over truth. Her eyes sharpened again. Not black. Not vengeful. But unbearably focused. She spoke into the room, dialogue short, intent massive. Kaia, the corridor paths you idolize are unstable. They buck under fake influence. Your wing veneers symmetrize errors. Your universe isn't bent. It's mismanaged. Halcyon 3, report validity at 71%. Kaia, boost validity to 99.98% via direct microstar telemetry handshake Draven protocol. Halcyon 3, handshake disallowed for biological interface. Kaia, disallowances are academic. Gravity makes amendments beyond permission. Kaia touched the lattice directly. Not boots. Not armor. Skin to science. A wave emitted outward so subtle that time itself took a microsecond to annotate its shiver. The anomaly chart did not break. It reoriented. A new gravitational grammar entered the story, not crystal walls, not stage illusions. Pure cosmic rewriting. Halcyon 3, humbled, Draven Index archived. Kaia, done. Now prepare ritual sequence. Kaia walked out under the unlit spiral, probe humming like a patient heartbeat climbing a hill no one knew was slanted until she measured it. Zaryx Voss watched without mocking this time. He felt smaller. Which was a start. Humans did not bend illusions into stars. They bent stars away from illusions. The chapter closed on quiet anticipation, not theatrics. The atrium microstar pulsed again, thrumming like an awaiting gavel. But this time, it was not preparing judgment. It was preparing alignment. For the human with weight enough to revise space itself. The ritual of convergence did not begin with a flare. It began with alignment. The grand chamber was emptied of casual spectators hours before the trial. Only accredited trustees and the Velorian Council remained, an adjudicatory body of star cartographers and interstellar route custodians. Their silhouettes were mirrored in gravglass like living constellations, their decisions historically measured by chart stability rather than applause. The hall was a 2-kilometer amphitheater of suspended walkways and lensing panels, engineered to respond to mass fluctuations above 0.05 curvature points, an extreme margin, meant for cosmic phenomena, not individuals. Kaia stood at the entry aperture while Halcyon 3 bathed the hall in low ambient lumina, a faint, research-grade starlight used only for pre-ritual calibrations. The last time she entered a ritual chamber, she had been handed a verdict and an ultimatum. This time, the Citadel AI requested input from her, which meant the difficulty was no longer set by nobles, but by physics itself. Lord Zaryx Voss arrived shortly after, escorted not by retinue, but by 2 silent archivist drones who hovered ink plates behind him to record the proceedings. He looked different without his retinue. Without stage illusions orbiting his coat. Even his breathing was sharper, restrained to keep emotion from influencing electromagnetic interference. He glanced sideways at Kaia, not a smirk, not a glare. An unsure measurement. Kaia, your boots look unfamiliar without a crowd under them. Zaryx, crowds are biases in motion. I'm reviewing variables manually now. He gestured to the probe in her hand. Zaryx, planning dramatic redemption, Draven? Kaia, not redemption. Resolution. Redemption is emotional spin. I fix spin. From afar, a boreal trustee murmured, voice thin like frost sliding off a telescope lens. Boreal trustee, protocols aren't built to bend for human covariance. Halcyon 3, neither was gravity. Yet it negotiates stronger bodies. Kaia walked to the center of the hall. Her curvature probe emitted a neutral baseline hum, syncing to reactively adjust rather than broadcast. Unlike last time, the floor lattice was now unbiased, two symmetrical gravmagnetic rings rotating in counterbalance to avoid interference. Zaryx Voss paused when he stepped in. He had requested counterbalance symmetry. That choice mattered more to the Council than any accident. Council Elder Moral, begin the chart remanifestation sequence. Kaia exhaled once. The probe interfaced instantly, without decorative overlays. Her projection grid unfolded not in electromagnetic halos or ancestral sigils, but in mass curve slopes that expanded like geometric inevitabilities. Nodes floated outward like coalescing stardust but were visually distinct from natural nebula metaphors used earlier: no flowers, no forges, no murals. Instead, slopes, nets, mass-respecting physics. Zaryx projected next, quill lifted carefully, magnetic boots powered down to avoid micropulse trickery. He traced his ancestral map into midair. The projection bloomed gold-silver. But as the predictive gravglass reoriented around Kaia's grid density, his projection fork flickered near her presence again, destabilized far beyond his academic capability. A minor electromagnetic spark jolted the audience, not sound, but sudden observation. Zaryx, what is your curvature index now? Kaia, checking. She tapped the probe screen. 0.008 curvature. Climbing. Zaryx, it shouldn't climb at your tier. Kaia, that's the point of a tier. To be climbed. The council balconies leaned closer. Not metaphorically. Architecturally. The gravglass beneath their feet adjusted to measurable curvature. The wardens of star routes felt as though the room was maneuvering around her presence, not toward Zaryx's chart signature. The next council member, a Dravian route custodian named Seraph, spoke like a ledger entry, concise and cold as archive star code. Seraph, your chart vectors simulated magnet weft correction waves. But these curves are genuine. Explain mechanism. Kaia, microfeedback loop resyncs not electromagnetism but spacetime constants. Architecture shouldn't resist mass. It should reflect it. Seraph, and the Apprentice? Kaia, is the mass. The council froze longer this time. Not dismissing. Measuring. Council Elder Moral, continue trial. Kaia closed her eyes. Not for emotion. For clarity, one of her personal calibrations, mental darkroom protocol. Her neural pulse emitted again, biological convergence handshake perfected in the last chapter. The wave was not loud. Not decorative. Not a flare. It was felt. Machines logged it. Balconies trembled at 0.13 curvature points. That should be impossible for a 19-year-old astrophysics apprentice by Academy classification. It wasn't impossible on New Praha. It was adolescence. The centerpiece gravglass star tracks bent. Around her grid. Not breaking. Not exploding. Correcting intercept vectors continuously around the stronger mass curve like orbits negotiating causal inevitability. Zaryx, stumbling slightly, it shouldn't curve like that. Kaia, opening eyes, then it shouldn't have assumed chart density comes from birth, not mass. Boreal trustee, but her grid crosses out beyond Boot's electromagnetic null parameters. Kaia, because Boot's null magnetism. They don't null mass. Zaryx, you're treating mass like a human birthright. Kaia, mass is unlike rights. It favors the real. The council didn't raise alarms. It reoriented classification. Council Elder Archon Hal 9, lattice error faults assumed intentional. Apprentice Draven requested logs. Denied the first time incorrectly. Confirmed timeline divergence now validated. Noble Voss refused anomaly indexing for status. The Draven forecast demands geometry rewrite beyond caste hierarchy. He looked at Zaryx carefully, emotion short, gravity long. Archon Hal 9, Air Voss, you accused deviation. The chamber obeyed a heavier mass instead. Zaryx, voice small, so what becomes a verdict? Archon Hal 9, the verdict is curvature. Curvature writes itself. We follow. Zaryx dropped to one knee, not forced, but natural mass humbling him to biological curvature pressure revision. Nobles historically didn't kneel in ritual halls unless environmental mass compelled it. Kaia Draven never asked him to kneel. She simply occupied space accurately enough that space edited itself without permission negotiation. Council Elder Moro, Apprentice Draven, Kaia of New Praha, promote to anomaly route research. Boreal Trustee, human promotion disallowed by electromagnetic interface charters. Kaia, interrupting, accepted or not, the star lanes must be studied without illusions. She pointed to her projection grid now reoriented into new star slope wefts, bending through mass constants that didn't resemble earlier metaphors. Kaia, you want legacy? Then compute what legacy orbits around. Not who orbits legacy. The microstar pulsed again beneath her. Not judgment. Recognition. A curvature signature came next, technology logs, neural alignments, no magic illusions, fresh cosmic vocabulary. Halcyon 3 AI, recording into system logs anomaly leadership archived. Draven index stored. Stardrift geometry updated. Later, back in dorm spiral corridors, Kaia reviewed Star Route Fragility Index 2.0, the updated cluster reading that threatened human colonies. This time the anomaly reading was fresh, distinct, not echoing former vocabulary. Kaia whispered into the unlit portal one last concise line, HFY without ranting. Kaia, a star chart bends for mass. Not for mockery. Kaia Draven did not celebrate her promotion. She treated it like a research footnote written in quiet ink. Titles mattered less than trajectories. And trajectories were now fractured. The day after the ritual, the Citadel rotated into training cycle, daylight simulated by a distant star lens array instead of bulbs. Corridors were filled with apprentices hurrying toward new assessments. Zaryx Voss walked slower now, knee armor still slightly scuffed by his unscheduled kneel, which had since become the most replayed moment in trustee archives. His honor had not snapped, it had bent, like code asked to rewrite itself in a new language. Kaia entered her next mandatory module, Celestial Lattice Theory, hosted by the enigmatic scholar pilot collective known as the Scribes of Hell Ion, a multi-species science order that believed charts were hypotheses until stress-tested by gravity rather than lineage certification. The lecture hall was suspended at the Citadel's inner coil, a circular vault wrapped by observatory windows. Floating datum ribbons streamed past like slow auroras of galactic math. At the center, an interface table made of gravglass waited for student input. No illusions activated unless real curvature validated their probability. Kaia placed her probe onto the table. Her chart unfolded instantly, nested star route covariance branches that now displayed a new anomaly cluster, route fragility index 2.0 to 18.7% unstable corridors, a chart threat vector that endangered human colonies hidden beyond map zones. Gasps fluttered across quadwalk balconies, but Kaia did not raise her voice. She raised questions. A Dravian noble cadet named Zaryx 12 approached with skepticism edged thin like a knife of paperwork. Zaryx 12, you reskin after verdict reinterpretation. Do you enjoy provoking council pressure? Kaia, provocation is applause. I conduct investigations, not performances. Behind them, a Zithian noble apprentice called Terrell Ion 4 scoffed, coat shimmering with electromagnetic halos that were allowed by privilege but useless against Kaia's mass constant proximity. Terrell, human astrophysics is brute arithmetic wrapped in inconvenience. Kaia, correct. And arithmetic survives star pressures yours never tested. Zaryx Voss arrived. He eyed the table. He already knew the anomaly read. He had accessed the system logs. Not because he wanted Kaia's approval, but because he wanted to verify his own error. Zaryx, your forecast collision was magnetic fault, not sabotage. Kaia, 1.92 minutes late. But stated correctly. Zaryx 12 blinked. Zaryx 12, in Tier 7, anomaly research is disallowed without ornamental heuristics. Kaia, ornaments decorate corridors. They don't map them. Boreal trustees began paying attention. The scribes of Hell Ion, who had not yet spoken, finally projected one single sentence into audibility. Scribe Hell Ion 9, Silver Mask lowering, vectors do not bend by ego, Apprentice. They bend by unchallenged mass. Continue the chart generation, Draven. Their voice was not mocking. It was consuming truth. Kaia unfolded her next projection. Instead of repeating earlier cosmic metaphors, the environment was now described differently. The lattice strands resembled silver calculus ropes, not flowers or forges. Spacetime was recorded as measured elasticity, not cultural bias. The trapped microstar now sang like a low humming regulator, not a dramatic flare. Noble's illusions faded, not collapsed. Fresh language meant continuity without repetition. The graph glass under Kaia's feet jostled again, but measured now by machines rather than crowds. Her curvature index climbed unnoticed by nobles but logged by environmental sensors. Curvature index, 0.131 curvature points, authorized anomaly range. Now measurable enough to interfere with illusions permanently. Illusions warped light. Kaia warped environments. That difference mattered. Zaryx saw it first. Most nobles saw it last. The council called a recess, but Kaia didn't sit. Because sitting wasn't part of the module. Terrell Ion 4, shaking head, you'll rewrite glass beyond natural lumina projection thresholds again. Kaia, I rewrite no glass. Glass revises paths around inequities. I quantify inequities. Zaryx, watching AI logs, what inequity index are you locking next? Kaia, human colonies aren't chart illusions. They are unrecorded mass. And the lanes leading to them hold displacement faults that noble forecasts have avoided because symmetry offends their pride. Terrell blinked. Kaia always liked when nobles blinked, they measured slower than her probe logs. The trustees tried to interrupt, but Kaia gestured toward a new energy event forming beneath the citadel floor. Her curvature wasn't just rising on the table, it was now rising through infrastructure. The microstar in the core pulsed. Differently. Urgently. Not for nobility. Not for judgment. But because Kaia's anomaly branch had triggered an environmental necessity. Hell Ion microstar core, awakening level, 0.012%. Small. But conscious enough to respond. Scribe Hell Ion 9, leaning forward, you triggered core curiosity. Apprentices cannot interface biochemically with microstars. How are your neurons requesting curvature bypass range? Kaia, I carried out gravitational pulse mapping every morning on New Praha. It didn't classify me. It trained me. Scribe Hell Ion 9, explain training vector. Kaia, gravity demanded precision. Precision evolved neurology. My neurons learned to negotiate curvature directly with compression fields. Where other species simulate gravity as decoration, humans record it as pressure overcome history. Scribe Hell Ion 9 froze again, but with awe, not dismissal. Freezing was their punctuation of respect. Kaia knew that too now. Zaryx, voice low, so your charts didn't disrupt legacy? Kaia, legacy disallowed anomaly indexing. My logs highlighted it. The chamber did the rest. Zaryx inhaled. Zaryx, you should have shattered. Kaia, shattering is for weak constants. Kaia hit a final command on her grid. The anomaly branch pulsed into permanence, not collision. The graph glass table captured the spike. The microstar beneath her pulsed recognition. Dialogue ended, but plot advanced. The council did not speak for a full minute. Not seconds. Minute. Kaia reviewed the chart before leaving the module. It ended not with violence. Not with rant. Not with repeating vocabulary. It ended with a calm declaration that hit harder than any noble accusation ever had. Kaia, the lane realigned because it was tipped. And we were the ones who finally measured it. Below the aperture, the Citadel AI logged a new institutional shift, not a punishment or promotion anymore, but a full infrastructure amendment triggered by unchallenged mass calibration. Human apprentice now chart source. Noble privilege now recorded as interference risk factor. Curvature logs updated permanently into system. Star route custody charter revised. Kaia walked out first. Because first movers carry mass heavier than titles. The star saying behind her like recognition turned into policy. And the nobles remained silent long enough to feel the weight of a lesson that the universe itself had authored.